I still remember back in the early 2000s playing with the original plastic generation Beyblades at my cousin's place, and then later on the schoolyard battles I had during the Metal series. This year marks the 25th anniversary of Beyblade, and with it, we've received a fresh generation of Beys. Beyblade X is the 4th generation of Takara's battling tops, and combines the strengths of all previous generations into the ultimate Beyblade experience. The competitive angle of Bakuton, the heavy metal contact rings of the Metal series, the burst finishes of Burst, and introduces the new gear system of the Extreme line, or Accelerator Rail, as Hasbro wants to call it, into the fray. As much as Hasbro aren't really leaning into it like they should, Takara is right to market this generation as a gear sport rather than just a toy. This is a strategic, action-packed, competitive sport more than ever before. I have the entire first wave here, so let's get into it. An overview of Beyblade X so far. So let's start off this inevitably very long video talking about the important part of Beyblade X, the new stadium. There is also a very relatively cheap bucket stadium. I have not been able to find it for the life of me, and I'm not paying like $40 for it secondhand because it's not that good. Everything I've seen about it is that it's nowhere near as good as this. But the bucket does at least have the rail, which is something new to X. All of the bits have gear teeth on them, and the rail is geared. When a Bey hits the rail, it accelerates along the line and gets launched into the center of the arena. Well, at least that's the theory. Though from what I've seen of the Takara Stadium, it does work that way. Unfortunately, the Hasbro Stadium is a little bit more narrow, bringing the rail in on the sides, and that does seem to have the effect of not launching towards the center as much. It more launches towards the left pocket, or just flies off the top of the rail, though I think that may be more of a user error. Though after extensive testing, as you can probably tell from the ridiculous amount of scratches on this thing, it does work most of the time. Even after a couple of teeth on the rail getting damaged from a Bey hitting it, and having to bend them back into place, it works completely fine. But the stadium is a bit of an upfront cost, 50 US, which is like 70 Canadian, and they couldn't be bothered to include winder launchers, because Hasbro's cheap, but it does at least come with 2 Beys, so you get something off the bat. And really, to get the full effect of X's unique gimmick, you do have to get this stadium. Next up, launchers. This is the entry launcher, which was only ever released with a single drawn sword right at the beginning of Takara's release in Japan, but Hasbro, being the greedy cheapskates they are, decided to put this in pretty much everything. It has a shorter ripcord, no gearing, it's effectively 4 pieces of plastic and a single piece of metal. It is unbelievably cheap and also comically tiny. I mean, I have big hands, but even my friend who has tiny hands finds this really uncomfortable. I can basically only fit 2 fingers on it. I don't understand how this would even be comfortable for, like, young kids that have hands that are half my size. They'd... Garbage. Don't use them. Hilariously, Hasbro decided to be funny and put 2 of them in the stadium set in black. I can only imagine that was trying to trick parents and children into thinking that it was winder launchers, which they only sell on their own. The ones that come in the stadium are identical to the ones that come in the starters. It doesn't really like straightening out as much, but you can tell that it is definitely longer. It is actually the same teeth though, so if you wanted to use a shorter one for some reason in this, you could, I guess. But just the size difference alone is kind of hilarious. Anyway, these technically work, but there's garbage that they're going over there. The winder launcher you have to buy on its own, about $10. Feel like they're overcharging slightly for that, but it does actually have gearing. Much, much better. If you're going to have any level of competitive play with X, pick up one of these. Very much in your interest to do so. And finally, we do have the string launcher, which comes with Phoenix Wing, or Soar Phoenix, I think Hasbro called it. Very much worth picking up the set. I am a little bit worried about this breaking, but it has the same gearing as a winder launcher, so as long as you're not too worried about breaking the return, it's fairly equivalent. I do personally recommend the winder the most, just because I'm not worried about accidentally breaking it, but either of the actual proper launchers will do. Now, let's get into the actual Beyblades in Wave 1. Starting off with the sort of initial poster child of X, Drawn Sword, or Sword Drawn, as Hasbro likes to call it. I don't even know why they bothered. A couple of the names are slightly different, but I don't know why they reversed the naming convention. Drawn Sword sounds cooler, Anyway, Sword Drawn is the updated version of the mold that has the sloped ratchet connections and the filled in area so that it doesn't break as easy. And in Wave 1, you do actually get 2 different color options for this blade. Blue being the standalone release, and red being the 2-pack recolor. And honestly, I kind of prefer the red and black. Drawn Sword is the archetypal attack type. Heavy, strong hits. The stock combo has very, very aggressive playstyle, but the blade itself is a solid aggressive attacker. Next up, Wizard Arrow, which does also have a recolor in the 2 packs, this time green. A stamina type that honestly works just as well as defense. In fact, the green Wizard Arrow is a defense type, as far as I'm concerned. It uses the spike bit, which we'll be going over later. But while Arrow has decent outwards weight distribution, which, yeah, Wizard Rod definitely outpaces it, the very smooth edge and decent weight does make this a solid defense / stamina type blade. Next up we have Knight Shield, or Helm Knight, as Hasbro likes to call it. This is the defense type, though honestly I don't think it does as good at defense as Wizard. Doesn't quite have as much stamina. Does have a pretty good wall defense, though unfortunately it is off balance, so it kind of gimps its stamina for no reason. Still a fairly solid bay, which comes with usable parts. Spike is nice, but it's not exclusive to this, and 380 is okay. It's an alright enough defense blade, but it's not a must-have. And finally, for the main 4, we have Hell's Scythe, or Scythe Incendio, as Hasbro likes to call it. Hell's Scythe is much cooler, but I understand why they didn't call it that here. Very nice balance type, works pretty well for light attack, and definitely can work for recoil defense / stamina. And ending the main four with Health Scythe lets me also talk about the Hasbro, I'm just going to call them Echo Fighters because it's really the best name to describe them. The plastic is the same, but the metal is remolded. Mammoth Tusk is honestly one of the better remolds because rounding out these edges makes it a pretty solid defense type. It does reduce its overall attack power, but I actually find good use with this. One thing I will give the Hasbro Echoes is that while they are generally a bit lighter, they're not completely useless. Next up, let's talk about Viper Tail, or Tail Viper, and its Echo, Talentera. Both of these work okay as both attack and defense. Viper definitely has more recoil. The little fang mold is missing, though that doesn't really affect it that much. However, it just in general has more spikiness, I guess. Also, it is notably slightly heavier, which for recoil actually makes a difference. It's actually disappointing because I like this design a lot more than Viper, but generally Viper is the better of the two. That said, Terra does have okay parts, and it's a good low B, high C tier, so it's not horrible. It is worth picking up if you want either the parts or just a variant of Viper Tail. Next up, another Echo that, as of recording this, the original Takara design isn't out yet. This is Steel Samurai, which is a Echo of Leon Claw. Honestly, this may be one of the best Hasbro designs, though that puts it at about a high B tier, I'd say. They treat it as a balance type, and I can't really argue with that. It has okay recoil, but it does sit kind of high, so it's easy to burst. Next up is Keel Shark, or Shark Edge. Does get a recolor. No Echo Fighters in Wave 1, though they will be coming. Honestly, this is one of the best bays you can get. If you want one bay that's pretty much tournament-ready stock, this is the one to get. The single pack Shark Edge is an incredible stock combo. It exclusively has low flat, which we'll be talking about later, but low flat is good. Paired with this having strong upper attack, this is a force to be reckoned with. And the last of the Echo Fighters for Wave 1, we have Rhino Horn and Knife Shinobi. Rhino Horn kinda sucks. It sits a bit high, so it's not very defensive of its ratchet, and it has a very small profile, which makes it very, very easy to hit the ratchet and burst. I mean, honestly, your best bet is not to use it as a recoil defense, but actually use it as a recoil attack. And if you're going to use it as a recoil attack, I honestly recommend using Knife Shinobi instead. While it is a little bit lighter, the remolding actually makes it better at being an attack type. There really isn't much point to buy the Rhino Horn single pack, because the other parts it comes with aren't great either. Almost at the end of the blades now. We have Drawn Dagger, which is one of the two that comes with the stadium. This is obviously an evolution, I guess I'll call it, of Drawn Sword. And honestly, it's pretty good. Rather than having the 3 heavy attacks, it has 6 medium attacks. Honestly, I do find this ends up being a better piece in general. It's nice that it comes with the stadium because it means that pretty much everyone will have it now. If you want an attack type and you don't want to use Shark Edge, this is a solid attack type. It's not massively better than anything, but it does its job well. And we have the other evolution in the first wave, Hell Chain, or Chain Incendio. This is a very, very versatile bay because the chain shaping means it has both up and down attacks, and honestly the stock combo is pretty solid too, so personally I would either raise it up to an 80 or drop it down to a 6, just because the stock combo is just sort of using it as a recoil instead of using its up or down attacks. And finally, the last blade, Phoenix Wing, or Soar Phoenix. Figured I should at least get some B footage of this without all the paint chipped off before I do a ton of testing and just absolutely ruin this beautiful paint. It's never gonna look this pretty again, but hey, battle scars are cool. The painted prize bay that came with the string launcher. As you can probably tell, I've done extensive testing with all of these. All 3 parts this comes with are tournament tier. Excellent parts to use. The blade especially is one of the heaviest in the entire series and has both really good attack and really good recoil. The entire Soar Phoenix string launcher pack is worth picking up. Potentially just for this, but all the parts are good. Now, getting into Ratchets, let's start off with the ubiquitous 360. The naming convention for Ratchets is really basic. It's the number of little bumps for bursting and then the height. So a 360 is 3 bumps, 60 millimeters. In Wave 1, if you buy all of them, you get 4. This one's definitely my favorite, the red on red, but trans purple on solid purple looks pretty good too. This is ubiquitous for a reason. This is arguably the best Ratchet you can get. Aside from one other, this is low and hard to burst. You should definitely have at least one of these in your deck at all times, and if you're not running on tournament rules, probably 2. This Ratchet is perfect for attack types, decent for defense, and still okay for stamina. Next up we have the other 3-sided Ratchet, 380, which as you can probably tell, 80 height, sticks down a bit further. Again, there's 4 of these if you buy the entire first wave. Not as useful, though it will add a bit of extra stamina at the cost of being slightly easier to get underneath and burst. Not as good as 360, but still pretty solid. And next up, we go back to 60, but with 460. You get 3 in the first wave. Colors aren't quite as nice as some of the others, but I do like this one. 460 is probably the second worst Ratchet, not because of the height, but because 4 kinda sucks. The shaping on the nubs makes them very easy to burst, and something to do with the way this likes to line up on most bays means that it's very exposed and easy to burst, so just lower on the priority list. Though, to be fair, not quite as bad as 480. You only get 3 of these, and they're kind of disgusting colors anyway, but not only is it the worst number, very easy to burst ring, but it's higher up, meaning it's easier to get under your bay and smack that and burst it. Would not recommend using these, though thankfully you don't get too many. Very, very few bays would benefit from using this piece. Next up, we have the 560 and 580. A bit harder to tell them apart, but you only get 1 of these each in Wave 1. And 560 is one of the better Ratchets. A little bit easier to burst because it has so many, but these are not too bad. And I have actually found use in this in my own deck, so 580, again, it's better than 480, but between the two, definitely, I would recommend 60. And finally for Ratchets, we get to 960, which technically does have 9 bumps on it, but it's effectively a subtle 3. This comes on Phoenix Wing, or Soar Phoenix. It is almost impossible to burst this. If you have this Ratchet, there is no reason not to use it. Now, let's talk bits. Bits have a few things going on for them. The gearing, the tip, and the resistance in the shaft, I guess. Basically, there's both low and high resistance bits. Due to how they interact with the Ratchet, the thicker area puts more pressure on it, making it harder to burst. First up, we have Flat, which, as the name implies, is flat, is the titular attack type. You get 3 in the first wave, which has a pretty good array of colors to go with. Very standard attack pattern with this bit, and obviously doesn't have a lot of stamina. In wave 1, you get 3 different variants of Flat, Low Flat, Rush, and Gear Flat, all 3 of which are high resistance bits. Low Flat drops the height down by another 10, meaning that if you put it on a 60, it drops it down to 50. There's a reason this bit comes with Shark Edge. It's perfect for upper attacks. Next we have Rush, which has a more narrow tip, as well as fewer gears than the standard Flat. This means that it burns around the extreme rail, though it does also cause it to burn through a lot more stamina doing so. And finally we have Gear Flat, which is a flat where the gears go all the way to the tip. It is a highly aggressive bit, though it does wear down pretty fast and become less aggressive. Next up we have the Taper bit, which is a less aggressive attack type bit. This is used on most of the balance types. There's 3 in wave 1, and honestly it's a very solid bit. It's high resistance, has a decent stamina, and a decent attack. It's all around just a very good middle ground balance bit. There's only one variant in first wave, and that's High Taper, which raises the height of the bay by 10. Next up we have Ball, which is a low friction bit. This is a stamina type, and honestly it works very well as a stamina type. Only 2 different colors in the first wave, but usable. There's one variant of Ball in wave 1, which is Orb. It's basically a smaller ball. Low resistance, and honestly it's not great. It is a okay stamina, but it does get knocked around a lot easier than Ball. Overall, I kind of just consider this a worse Ball. It's not really worth using over Ball itself. And the defense type, Needle. Low friction, okay, it's not an amazing bit, but it works pretty well for defense at least. There is, however, 2 different variations in wave 1. High Needle, which raises the bay by 10, and Spike, which is honestly just a worse needle. It's very easy to bully a bay using this. Doesn't have great recovery, it's not better than Needle in any meaningful way. Surprise to me as much as you, but I ended up wasting another $20 to buy this because, hey, I bought everything else in wave 1, I might as well put this in the video. Roll the box. Yeah, the frankly overpriced red Dronzer. Personally, I would have preferred the blue Dronzer since I have a mini one of the plastic gen around somewhere. Though, to be fair, I do think I actually have red Dronzer somewhere. I'm never going to find it, but I won't actually be using this because, frankly, it's not good enough to even bother testing. Everything I've heard about it online is that it's garbage, and given the weight of the entire bay being lighter than some blades, yeah, it sounds about right. Also, weirdly, I understand them painting the edges red because, you know, they don't want exposed plastic there, but all the metal is painted silver. That's metal flake, you can see. Why? I don't understand why they did that. Also, the ratchet and bit are just 380 and taper, which, I mean, you get tons of these unless you specifically want a red 380 or this specific shade of red for the taper, but neither of these parts are really that useful. I mean, you have a ton of tapers if you got pretty much anything from wave 1, and 380s not very rare either. Basically, only really buy this if you have nostalgia for it. Because it's not viable at all. I will say, having to put the stickers on, these are really good stickers. I used a toothpick just to align them a little bit better. They maybe could have a slightly less tight cut there. It barely fits in around the little raised areas, but the actual sticker material is really good. It's clearly a solid plastic, and it seems to me like the adhesive is pretty good. So I'm not worried about these getting damaged or just falling off or anything, which is good at least. Not that it matters, because all the paint on this would be destroyed the moment you use it anyway. Oh, also, yeah, it does come with a white entry launcher, which is completely the same that comes with all the other starters. Would have been nice if they at least colored it red or something, but now that we've gone through all the parts, assembly of a Bay from X. Very, very simple. Blade, ratchet, locked, bit. Rotate this until you feel higher resistance than usual. And finally, to end off, I had a tournament legal battle with a friend of mine. Because there's no better way to show off Beyblade X than just by showing it off. Enjoy. Definitely recording now. 3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1. Short. 3, 2, 1. That's someone that cut me. Easy. 3, 2, 1.
Fine. You're not gonna jump yet.
3, 2, 1. Three, two, one.
Use apple stamina, that'd be it.
3, 2, 1. 3, 2, 1.
It really is.
Destroy stamina, jeez.
A shark is a shark, quote unquote.
Yeah.
I think that one's more of a shark.
3, 2, 1.
Nice shot.